welcome everyone to the session of Financial Education and Wellbeing for Councils, NHS Trust and Emergency Services. And we say a very warm welcome to everyone that is here and will be joining us along the way as well. So just to give you a bit of an overview in terms of the agenda for today, I'll be doing a welcome and introduction shortly around Let's Improve Workplace Wellbeing, who I am. Also an introduction to the speakers, so handing over to them to be able to showcase their expertise and give them a little bit of time to introduce themselves. We'll be diving into the challenges around financial well-being and particularly in the public sector. We'll also go through the success stories and best practice, because of course it's always really good to take some key takeouts, and also the top tips that you'll be able to take away and perhaps use or support you in your journey. If you have any questions, etc., please do use the chat, which we'll pick up during the conversations, and I'll be able to pull those out and we'll be able to take it from there. And then we'll end off with sharing some follow-up resources, which again, if you'd like to reach out to us, we'll be able to also share, but we'll also share in the chat. So first of all, my name is Nuz Shagan, and I am one of the co-founders of Let's Improve Workplace Wellbeing. And in my own capacity, I've been a workplace wellbeing strategist. I've worked for a number of different businesses, really looking at embedding and enhancing their wellbeing strategy. From that perspective, financial wellbeing has always been the area that I've had the most enthusiasm around. I was at the forefront to bring in a financial wellbeing strategy for IKEA, and that was in a former life. So very one of those that I'm quite passionate about. Let's Improve Workplace Wellbeing is a non-for-profit CIC. So a CIC is a community interest company. The company does not exist to create profits or benefit in that way. It was really established to bring together those in the wellbeing space, HR, anyone that was responsible for really driving the wellbeing agenda in the workplace and from across the globe, and industry, with the common goal of working together to learn and share from best practice. We also wanted to create a safe space. That was the purpose of us really bringing everyone together. And this was during the pandemic, and myself together with Ryan really drove this agenda. We are very pleased to have the support of the experts, especially giving up their time, for instance, today, as well as a whole group of wellbeing leads, but also some key sponsors that have really gone over and above to give us support. So, we do look at Business for Health, GoVox, Margie, etc., that really give us that opportunity to do some of the work that we are doing. So moving on, I'm going to hand over to some of our panelists to be able to introduce themselves. So I'm going to really get in there and give it over to Natasha Hill to be able to, introduce herself. So over to you, Natasha, and then I'll move on to Justine.
Okay, fantastic. Good afternoon. My name is Natasha Hill. My voice is a bit strange. I'll apologise quickly because I've got a bit of a chesty thing going on. But my name is Natasha Hill. I'm a police officer down in Devon and Cornwall. I've been a police officer for 25 years nearly, but I have been a wellbeing officer since June 2020. So I've done lots of different roles, including working in counter-terrorism within the safeguarding world, and youth intervention and all sorts of other roles. But I'm very, very passionate about wellbeing and really passionate about making sure that we can support our staff around all areas of wellbeing. And I lead on financial wellbeing across Devon, Cornwall and Dorset. So I've been really pleased to be able to work with Ryan and Finwell over the last few months, and will continue doing so. And yeah, just really looking forward to opening up the discussion today and sharing lots of best practice.
Thank you for that. Justine, over to you.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justine Piercy, and I'm Head of Training for Finwell. My background is predominantly banking and finance, and I've spent the last maybe 3 or 4 years teaching and educating people in all aspects of money management. I'm really passionate about this getting onto the school curriculum and supporting our kids and young adults to learn this stuff, but also helping clients in any organisation or workplace, really get to grips with understanding what financial wellbeing is and the different options that are open to people. So, so delighted to be here, and I'll share with you lots of my thoughts and views when we get into the debate in a little while.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, Justine. On to you, Kate, to be able to introduce yourself.
So, hi everyone, my name is Kate. I'm an organisational psychologist, and I used to work in research and consultancy within health and wellbeing, and I've worked in that for about 9 years, and then I wanted to move into an in-house role, so I started working at Moorfields Eye Hospital as the health and wellbeing advisor there last year.
Super, thank you so much. And then moving on to Nisha.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nisha Porter, and I'm the Head of Organisational Development at Sutton Council, which is a shared service across Kingston and Sutton, and we also have traded services. I've been in local government for just over 16 years. Really passionate about people. I think our workforce is our greatest asset, and where they are working with the most vulnerable within our community, we need to ensure that they also have access to good wellbeing support in a holistic way. So for me, financial wellbeing is at the heart of that, particularly with the cost of living crisis that we're experiencing. Really looking forward to this discussion this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then on to Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Nuz. Great to see everyone on here. I'm Ryan, set up Finwell a year and a half ago now, worked with Justine, background financial services for over 10 years, and really got the opportunity to work within organisations around all the steps kind of before advice, all the basics, all the stuff that we don't learn at school. So delighted to be in that space and working with all of the panelists, and yeah, to be part of this. So brilliant.
Okay, super. Thank you so much. So we're going to jump straight in, and we're really going to be discussing some of the challenges, I think, and getting some of the opinions from the panelists at the moment. So we know there's lots of challenges at the moment. If we think of restricted budgets or the cost of living crisis, financial control and domestic abuse, there's a plethora, and this is a good way of us sharing the kind of challenges that we are seeing. And please do, I mean, if you take a moment and just skim through some of these, and please use the chat, as we say, to engage and be able to share some of the insights that you may have or that perhaps are not on this list. And I'm going to go to our panelists at the moment just to kind of pick up one of the challenges that they've perhaps focused on or identified and are really working on. So Kate, I'm going to put you on the spot there and be able to ask you from these really, what do you think is the one that strikes out to you?
So the one kind of big challenge for us, which I'm sure is a challenge for lots of other organisations, is really the rising cost of living, and particularly the already high cost of living in London, because a lot of our colleagues are based in London, so that high cost of commuting and also renting. And I think the impact of that then on the many different areas of life, including kind of their health, their productivity and their performance.
Okay, Nisha, coming to you, what are your thoughts in terms of some of these challenges that we're seeing coming across?
Thank you. And very similar to what Kate has said, we're working within a London borough, so our workforce are experiencing the same challenges as our residents and communities. So I think part of the challenge is actually just starting the conversation. Finances is something that, as we've said already, it's not something that we are necessarily taught at school. And at times there can be almost an assumption that because you're working, you're in a good position. So there is, I guess, a bit of, is embarrassment the right word? Probably not quite, but that's the word that kind of comes to mind. So I think actually creating the space where you do not feel judged, where you can obtain financial information to give you that starting step in terms of exploring what might be able to help you on a personal level, but equally also supporting our managers in being able to identify where someone might be struggling with their well-being, and give them the tools to be able to have the conversation has been really important for us in terms of the challenge.
Mm-hmm. And coming to you, Justine, with your experience at Finwell and some of these scenarios that you're seeing with businesses that you're working with?
I kind of echo both of what you guys, Nisha and Kate, have said, because there is so much stigma around money, not just in the workplace, but just in general, really. And this stigma becomes even more difficult when people don't know where to go and what support is available. And that lack of education is what's really, really missing at the moment. A lot of clients say to us, well, surely it's just all about pay. And we say, no, it's not about pay. It's about the choices and the attitudes and behaviours around what we do with the money that we have got that is lacking. And it's not just because we're in a cost of living crisis. Okay, this is because 50% of the population don't know how to manage their money, don't know how to budget, don't know how to plan. And that is just exasperated when you then throw in rising inflation and people with less disposable income. So I think all of that wrapped up is putting pressure on the workplace to provide support, and people are struggling to know what to do, where to go within, cost effective and budgets and all of that.
Okay. And Ryan, to the same point as to the many challenges that we're seeing, which are the ones that strike coming out of that?
It's hard to pick one because all of them on that list and more, I'm sure. And yeah, it'd be great to hear from people on the call if they want to add any others that they're seeing. I think the fact that still financial education, financial well-being is seen to be relatively new. There's lots of great work that's been done around mental health and well-being over the last 5-10 years. And what with the fallout from the pandemic that's happened, the cost of living crisis or challenge, a lot's happened, in the last 3 years or so. There's a lot been going on. So employers, are struggling a little bit, some that we speak to, just where to start, what can they do? Mm-hmm. This hasn't been something maybe that's been added to their list of things to do until recent years. But I think for me, the biggest challenge we've had and from working with companies and getting their feedback has been, yes, starting off, creating that safe space to just start talking about this and finding out what employees might need, and then how to personalize it. Because I think, we work with organizations with from 10 to 10,000 people. They're all different ages, they're all different income levels, job roles, different family situations. There's areas of neurodiversity to consider. So I think traditionally financial education, financial well-being might have just been seen as pay and pensions and maybe benefits. But now, that there's a whole host of things that are all linked back to money. And it can be challenging perhaps for employers to cater for all the needs and all the challenges that they see. So just knowing where to start, I suppose it can get quite overwhelming for employers to think about this as well.
Yeah, of course. I think what resonates and a common theme across what everyone is really saying is around this topic of stigma. And I think often we have an assumption that people that have jobs and that are in these roles and everything, but of course you should understand how to balance your money. But actually, was it taught at school, and how do we open those conversations? And, something can come along. And I remember going through the same or similar journey, understanding financial well-being and how do you bring it to a host of employees. And breaking it down. And it's usually that first step of being confident enough to say, I don't know where to go to get the resources and the support, etc. And also it's quite embarrassing. One of the scenarios and experiences I had was someone within the workforce, slept in her car rather than say that she was in financial trouble. And that was quite heart-wrenching because you're thinking, but we're here to support you. And she thought it was much rather to do that than actually admit that she just didn't have enough means and she was in trouble. So I think it's something to really resonate with. Kate, I'm going to come back to you along some of the examples, etc. of how have you managed to take some of the discussions, etc. or what sort of ideas have you had that you've seen are quite promising?
So one of the areas that we've been working on is the hardship grant. I've been working on that with Finwell. So we are fortunate enough to work with Moorfields Eye Charity, and they kindly fund our hardship grant, and it's for colleagues that are facing financial challenges. And we were really keen that in addition to being able to provide financial assistance if the kind of application was supported, we also wanted to be picking up, as Justine and I think everyone else has mentioned, on that kind of education and knowledge and skills bit, so that we've added, as part of the application process, all colleagues receive a one-to-one financial guidance session with Finwell, so that they can get some of that knowledge, that skills, that education piece, and then that application is reviewed in terms of then the actual kind of financial assistance. So that's one of the things that we've been doing, and that has been, we launched that in June, and we've had quite a high number of colleagues actually that have been applying to that for a huge range of reasons. A lot of them are relating to kind of general cost of living and council tax arrears, rent arrears, lots of different bills that they're not able to afford due to the increases. And then we also have run some workshops with Finwell. So we've done a cost of living workshop, the breakthrough budgeting workshop, and then we've got one which I'm really looking forward to, actually, in National Grief Awareness Week, which is going to be focusing specifically on trauma and bereavement and looking at the financial considerations of that, because that's something that we've also noticed as a theme in some of our hardship grant applications. And I think that's also something that's definitely not really talked about in the context of the workplace. So that's a really important one. And then we do also work with another financial wellbeing partner. So they've run some kind of NHS pension sessions. And we also partnered with the London Capital Credit Union. So we signpost colleagues to them as well. So trying to have a huge range of initiatives that kind of offer the different elements of like the education, knowledge and skills, as well as some of the actual financial support as well that's available.
Thank you. That's quite interesting. Hello.
Yes, I was just gonna jump in quickly and say what Kate's described there is a mixture of different ways of helping colleagues. Okay, so not everyone is going to need, you know, a workshop with lots of people on it. Some people will want that one-to-one holding a hand and a human face element to it, as well as making the most of existing employee benefits. You know, Kate, you've said about a number of other organisations to support things like your pension scheme, and I think it's important that it's not just a one-size-fits-all approach, and that we've got different solutions in place to help and support colleagues.
Yeah. So yeah, it was what I was going to note around this real collaborative and holistic approach. It's not one size fits all. It's also being quite adaptive and looking at the different resources, but also looking across the organization of where you can actually leverage some of the conversations, etc. And I think it's not every organization that's going to be able to do that. Perhaps investigating and seeing what options you do have is quite an interesting way to go down that pathway. So I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, because I definitely do have, and I'm intrigued about the process that you actually went through to actually, you know, facilitate and bring it in. So Natasha, I'm going to come to you in terms of, you know, we've spoken around a lot of the challenges. Big one is around the stigma, but I guess what have you found that has been a good example and something that you've been working on that you have found has really supported this discussion on financial well-being?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, definitely within the police and other emergency services, it isn't any different. There is a real stigma. And I mentioned earlier around, we have some issues that historically people felt that their vetting process would be interfered with if they raised the fact that they had debt, and that absolutely isn't the case. So we're trying to kind of make sure we're sending out the right messages now and making sure that people are really clear about that. We've also got, I think, within the police, a lot of people join later on in life when it's a second career, and so they're taking a pay cut very often, which is a huge challenge. We're talking to lots of people about that regularly. They've got young families taking a pay cut, so that is a real challenge. But we found it can be really difficult to engage shift workers and frontline workers. So obviously response, who are out and about answering 999 calls. So to run a workshop like this, for example, they, you know, just would never be able to commit to that. But the beauty of having this online world is that we can then record it, and we've then got a library of resources that we've built up on our internal system. So that we then encourage teams whenever they do have a training day or maybe an opportunity at any downtime, which is very rare, but that they can then watch it at their leisure. We also offer people the opportunity to sign up from home. So if they are on a day off, you know, but it is something that's really important to them, then they can sign up from home. And we run an annual virtual wellbeing festival called Wellfest. This year was our 4th year. been really successful. It went out across all UK police forces and other emergency services this year, and we had about 8,500 ticket requests, 64 sessions over 2 weeks covering all areas of wellbeing. And that again has been a fantastic way to raise awareness around financial wellbeing, for example. So again, to have a number of different workshops, Finwell provided some, and again to offer that breadth of choice really around where people can go for support. And yeah, just really trying to encourage that conversation, so that, because as Kate mentioned, we're in exactly the same position where we've had to set up food banks internally, because staff don't feel able to go to food banks externally, because they're then very often meeting people that they may have dealt with in a professional capacity previously, and it can be really uncomfortable. So we've set up internal food banks and food vouchers. So it's really, really tough and difficult times. And also geographically down in Devon and Cornwall and Dorset, we're obviously an enormous area to cover. So again, having these online workshops has been absolutely fantastic. That has kind of really taken off since COVID. It just means that we can reach so many more staff, and as I say, hopefully offer a real breadth of resources. And we've also been discussing recently with Ryan about trying to put together some more actual physical resources. So we've kind of, rather than everything being online, we do a lot of in-person presentations and annual tours. So we want to make sure that we've got a whole load of leaflets. So Ryan's looking at putting one together for us that's got QR codes on it, so that people can scan and get lots of information. And again, that around financial wellbeing, I think, is really important.
No, it's quite fascinating. What I take from that is just how inclusive you have to be. You have to be adaptable to the fact that there is not everyone that's coming the 8:30 to 5:30. There are people on shift workers, and I think that's quite applicable for when we even look at the retail industry, where people are on different shifts. Reaching more of the many people will always be a challenge, but it sounds like you have adapted and given a lot of options. So some really good examples there. I'm just going to reiterate again here, please do put in comments or questions in the chat, so we're able to also bring them through to the panelists and learn from one another as well. Nisha, I'm gonna come to you. How have you found what has worked and something that you've managed to implement in?
I think what's works really well is the partnership that we've had with Finwell. So we've been working with each other for just over a year, I'd say. As we know, we could see the forecast around the cost of living. So we ensured that we had workshops. I think our earliest workshops are at sort of the end of September last year, October. And we created a variety, so similar to what Natasha has said, making sure that they're recorded, but making it so you had specific sessions for our HR colleagues, our mental health champions, and our staff networks. And what that does is it enables colleagues that may not always feel comfortable sharing with their manager to engage with other colleagues within the workforce, and giving them the confidence. So I think as a mental health champion or a first aider, finance probably was an area that was less familiar a year ago. So giving them the information, being able to have a microsite. So the microsite that's been created by Ryan and the team has been really helpful as a signposting mechanism. And that, coupled with our employee assistance program, just gives people options, and you can choose. So whether it's attending a workshop or having a one-to-one session, that variety, and both externally through Finwell, but also with our internal colleagues has been powerful. But I think that we're probably still quite early on in the journey. As we're all saying, this is still relatively new in terms of financial wellbeing. So I can't sort of speak enough about the importance of that communication and creating that safe space for people to feel comfortable with speaking about this. And that, for me, that goes alongside our approach to equality, diversity and inclusion. So it's about creating that inclusive environment where we're encouraging colleagues to be their true self. And that means having sometimes those difficult conversations. There was a comment in the chat about how to engage with your shift workers, and I guess from a local government perspective, we have that same challenge. Our social workers are out there visiting families, so again, just engaging directly with their service leads, their directors, to identify when is a good time. Not being afraid to sort of go back to basics and finding what works for them is also something that I would recommend.
No, that really resonates, because it's all about simplifying and going back to basics. And it's the thing that I'm taking out the most is we often think of it quite huge, don't we? But actually breaking it down into steps and starting at the bottom and then building up is something that does work well. Justine, coming to you, of course, in some of the examples that have been given, what could you add to what you've seen as well?
It's really interesting listening to the ladies talking about creating psychologically safe spaces, because I think that's what's going to break the stigma. And certainly what we're trying to do is to bring together managers and leaders and colleagues in order to be able to share their own experiences to create that safe space. And what we've seen over time is once they realise it's not a scary subject, that they can listen, engage, that they start to share their own experiences. And that's, I guess we've been very conscious of that from a training and a delivery point of view, that, we're not, advisors in pinstripe suits trying to sell something. We are trying to create that, environment where people feel comfortable enough to open up and share, whether that's, difficulties and challenges, or more importantly, solutions. So we very much are trying to create all of our workshops in that kind of space, so that people can go back, look in their own time, and realise that actually we're not, you've heard this phrase before, Liz, we're not all in the same boat. I say it every single time. I'm not going to get sick of hearing it, but we are very much, very different. We're all different challenges, and, it is a stormy time, but the only way we're going to help each other is to work together with collaborative partners, with employees and leadership coming together, and that's what's going to break it down. And I think the more we can do that, the more we're going to win and help support colleagues.
No, of course. And I think also a really valid point from what you was just saying there is that, when we look at the bigger picture, we are trying to engage our employees to be the better versions of themselves. And how do you create that is when I feel a sense of belonging. And what do you do to create a sense of belonging? It's that I feel seen and heard and supported. So I think this all comes into that real keen topic around how does all of this all link together. That intersectionality between things is really valid. And Natasha, to your point, in looking at how the areas of well-being, be it financial well-being, how does it actually branch out into different sections, and how does that intersectionality really bring it all together? So really vital. So Ryan, from your perspective, and of course your expertise, having delivered a lot of these workshops, from really touching on the point of that simplification and accessibility of communication and materials is something that I find is really vital here. Is it needs to be easily accessible, and it needs to be on the go, quick. Anything you could add to that area, I guess?
Yeah, sure. The biggest success I think we've had is some of the feedback that we've received from employees and leadership team members as well, from doing whatever it was that we've done with that company. And that the first one was that they don't feel alone anymore. If there is a stigma about this, they're not talking about it at work, very likely to not be talking about it, outside of work and at home as well. So to not feel alone, and just to feel supported, whatever the company can do. And we're all aware of the challenges around budget and funding, and that, organizations are going through these challenging times as well as us as individuals. So just those two things, to not feel alone and to feel supported to some extent, is really important. But again, we started this off a year and a half ago with one workshop, and Justine will probably laugh looking back, and it was around the cost of living, and that's what everyone wanted, and that's what we really developed, and that was great. But now looking at the breadth of topics and themes that we've been asked to try and design and deliver, and really that personalization of diversity and inclusion, making sure there is something there for all of your people, and the different avenues that it's gone down. We're now looking at specific challenges for parents, for carers. We're looking at menopause and money and the links between the two. We're looking at bereavement, grief, trauma, and loss, as Kate said, and we're talking to Natasha about, definitely within the police forces, and then even on to things like financial control and domestic abuse. There's just so many, and that's only what we're at the moment. There's so many different things, different life stages that link back to money in one way or another, or have an impact on money, or vice versa. So that's been really encouraging to see. And I think having various ways to support your people, again, it was mentioned, online workshops is how we've really kind of started our business, and that's probably our flagship product. But not everybody wants to go on a workshop. Not everybody's going to feel comfortable yet to maybe attend a workshop, or they can't because of time constraints. So I think looking at educational content in various forms, again, we learn in different ways, and not just articles. Looking at video content that people might be able to get quickly, just a short, sharp video, like you're saying, as accessing that really easily, through to podcasts and audio files, infographics. We've got a lot at our disposal now, and there's lots of ways that we can try and be creative to engage and communicate with our people. And I think you have to sort of consider all of those, really, because you never know when that light bulb moment might be for someone to actually sort of take notice and engage and take action. So there's a lot of successes that we've had, and seen through working with private sector, public sector, different sized organizations as well. We'll bring up different challenges, but I think we're really just at the start of it. I think, like we was with mental health and wellbeing, this will mature over the next few years, and companies will be able to make a big impact.
No, super. Justine, I know you ribbing to go there with more to add. Please do.
I was just reflecting actually on what Nisha was saying about the links between financial health and mental health. And a lot of work's been done, great work in the mental health space over the last few years. But we're starting to see the need now to equip leaders and mental health first aiders with training so that they can then go on and help other people. Because often these conversations, someone might just catch you in the corridor or at the coffee machine and suddenly say something, and you don't know how to help them. So we're certainly seeing appetite from a lot of clients to try and equip internal people so that they know what to do if they're faced with someone that's struggling, and also help signpost them to effective resources and websites, so that we're not just suffering the Google effect. But the other thing that as I was listening to Ryan, is lots of organizations right now are also going through cost of living, right, as well as employees, and difficult decisions are having to be made about jobs and job security and redundancies, dare I say it. And these are difficult decisions that are being made that are massively impacting people financially. And we're certainly starting to see much more of a conversation about, well, what support are we giving people that are maybe finding themselves facing redundancy and have never done so before, or even know where to start when it comes to looking at their budget and paying their bills. So I think that it's just growing, and I think it's equally more difficult now than ever before for employers to know what to do and where to go to support people.
Yeah, and I think it's opening up those conversations. So it comes back to what we started out with, is how do we create the psychologically safe space to start opening up these conversations? Because I think that's where it starts off, really, by not putting it aside. Because I always found with financial well-being, it was almost a poor relation when you looked at physical well-being and mental well-being and even social well-being. It was kind of the one that people put to the side. And often organizations are quite fearful of discussing it because they're afraid of what it brings up. Does it mean financial advice? Are we going to get caught up? And I'm sure many of you have crossed that bridge as well, where it was, oh, should we be talking about financial well-being, or is there something that puts us in some sort of corner when it comes to financial advice, etc.? So I'm sure that has come through as well. Just looking at some of the comments, so please do share your experiences. So thank you, Natasha, for sharing some of how the talk cafes on Teams that you have in relation to key topics, and this is what we talk about, sharing that best practice, because these are really interesting and I think quick wins. If you put stuff together, build it and they will come. I'm absolutely certain of it. And I think the peer support service as well, from police force as well, looking at over 100 staff signed up to help others, so to include financial well-being in their training, it is very positive, and I agree, it's opening up the conversations. I think also for organizations, it's you rather know what you know rather than not knowing, and then something comes along and derails you. So I think that's quite important. Where we're going to go is I'm going to leave the chat open in terms of questions at the moment, and then also please raise your hand if there is any comments that you would like to make. But I want to open up for questions before I go into kind of the 3 top tips that each of our panelists can be able to share. So I'm going to pause there for 1 minute just to give everyone an opportunity to, please don't all shout at once, but please, we'd love to get some engagement from yourselves as well, rather than us only talking to you and feeding out information. Are there any questions or anything that you would like to ask the panelists, or a comment that you would like to make? Yeah, thanks a lot, Sarah. So Sarah is saying, is there a tip on engaging the hard to reach employees? Nisha, would you like to take that? And then I'll go around just to add that one.
Yeah, happy to take that. So what I'd probably suggest doing, if you're not already, is working through your staff networks within your organisation. They quite often have the key to the wider colleagues and those that are harder to reach. I think it's really important, as beneficial as it is to be virtual, actually going to them. So when I think back to a previous local authority I worked in, we had a waste and cleansing service, and engagement was quite challenging, particularly around staff survey response rates. So I physically just went there, was there at 7 o'clock in the morning at the depot, speaking to them, sharing information. I think you can adopt that same approach in any sort of service area where it is harder to reach. I think it's important to demonstrate why you're there and how you can help. And if you can, warm that area up via your staff networks. Depending on who you are within your organisation, you might be actually a bit scary to the colleagues that you might want to reach out to. So thinking about who are your key stakeholders, and then sharing stories. So that was kind of one of my sort of top tips, was around that storytelling of people's experiences. If they're willing to, you can make it anonymous, but you can start that conversation through storytelling.
Super.
No, I was just going to add on that. Some of the stuff we're trying to do now is just not rely on email so much. Mm-hmm. And there's other sectors, construction and retail and hospitality that all have these challenges as well. And getting away from email and just trying to utilize technology, mobiles. Most people have a mobile. I know there might be conflicts if they want to share personal numbers or personal email addresses, but mobile technology, posters. We've just started really being asked to do that a lot now, to get really nice visual posters up and around depots, sites, canteens, toilets, whatever, because that's where people might be, and use of QR codes to then link through to videos or other content or events that you might be putting on, whatever it might be. Just thinking creatively, I suppose.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm smiling because I remember back in the day, everybody used to laugh at me when I used to say behind the toilet doors, please can put it behind the toilet door. And they'd be like, Nuz, you're a bit crazy. Then I was like, where's the one place that you just sit down for a moment? And it's like, that's where it is. And especially when it was trying to reach logistics or functions that did not really want to engage, but it's very true. It's coming out and not looking at the traditional email, and people are going to check their emails. Before I go into Kerry's question to Natasha, I guess, Kate, just to get some of your take on the question that was asked. I mean, any tip you can give on engaging the hard to reach employees? Because of course, it's not just shift workers. I think there are people that will be difficult to reach just purely because they just don't like to engage, or perhaps they are those, and we have to say that they are there.
Yes, I think similar to Nisha and Ryan in terms of getting out to specific sites. We've got a number of different satellite sites that we're trying to reach across a number of weeks and months, and trying to get those. I think that, as Nisha said, like the key relationships with those people on those sites who are going to be able to kind of help you to arrange that and actually get the message out to their peers. We've also been doing a couple of events at different times. So we did do a poll because we got feedback, which is completely understandable, that obviously lunchtime events don't work for a lot of our colleagues. So we did do a poll, and then we ran a kind of after work event, which was actually really well attended. So we're trialing kind of different, and we've done our workshops with Finwell as well. We've tried them at different times, and then also we had some feedback about running an in-person event. So we're doing a specific financial wellbeing event later this week, actually, that's in person, which limits the number of people that we can reach. But yeah, we're going to trial that, get feedback from that, see if that's what colleagues would like at other sites. I think it's about those key relationships, and again, getting that data and listening to colleagues and hearing kind of what different format or timing that would work for them.
Okay, and then coming to you, Natasha, of course, with the burning questions, I guess Kerry's asked, do you design the sessions yourselves or engage with external companies to deliver them? So I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, and I just popped something else in the chat box there around kind of just linking it into to other things. So, you know, as you say, people that ordinarily might see something about financial well-being and maybe switch off, or sort of think, you know, I don't want to put my head above the parapet to say that, you know, that I'm struggling, for example. So we're running a lunchtime jazz concert for Christmas in December, and then as part of that, we will then link in, you know, kind of links around financial well-being. We'll have something in person where we'll be handing out leaflets. So it's kind of sort of, you know, slipping them the information when they might least be least expecting it, I guess. And then going back to the talk cafes and the workshops, yeah, so we definitely work with other companies. So Finwell, as I've said, yeah, you can bring your trumpet, Ryan, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, Finwell obviously provide workshops for us. We've also got a company called Serve and Protect Credit Union, and another company called Police Mutual. So we try and engage with as many different companies as possible that have got different topics that just for whatever reason, you know, the way they style it, the way they format it might appeal to someone. And then in terms of the talk cafes, those are all designed by ourselves, and it's really very, very simple. We just, as I say, we've already got a number of topics in place around cancer and bereavement, and even open water swimming, fitness, caring responsibilities, menopause. And some of those topics are obviously really sensitive, and we didn't know, these talk cafes have been running for a couple of years. We didn't know how they would work on Teams. We kind of sort of thought, you know, people are going to be reluctant to open up about something as difficult as bereavement or cancer. But actually, it's been completely the opposite. It's given people a space to open up and talk, but also just to listen to others when they otherwise would not have had that opportunity. And many times I've had people contacting me saying, I'm going to come along to that talk cafe. I won't put my camera on, I won't talk, but I'll just sit in the background and listen to others, which is absolutely fine. And then without exception, they will all then turn on the camera or put something in the chat or engage in some way, but also they will link up maybe with someone whose circumstances are really similar to their own. And as I've said, the biggest amount of feedback we've had is that people just feel less alone. So I think that could work really well with financial well-being. And these things always start off small. You know, we might have 3 or 4 or 5 people coming along. But but I think it's it definitely builds up pace, and I think if we just had a monthly slot where people thought they could just jump on and maybe say, I'm struggling around budgeting, or what should I do around getting on the property ladder, or whatever it might be, and just have someone there to say, right, okay, did you know we've got this webinar, or did you know we've got this resource, or have you heard of Finwell, have you seen our microsite? We can then point them in the right direction. So it's very informal. One of us from the Wellbeing team will always host them, but they're very informal. They're just an opportunity to just have that open, honest discussion.
Super. Thank you so much, Natasha. So we're coming towards the end of our session. So I'm going to quickly whistle stop tour of all the panelists, your top 3 tips. So starting with you, Justine, top 3 tips, if we were giving everyone on this discussion, top 3 tips.
And I'm just going to answer Jenny's question actually about focusing on pay. My top tip is pay will always be talked about, but it isn't the solution. So actually providing various, resources, workshops, one-to-ones, posters printed will actually make them feel much more engaged, because we're trying to empower people to make the most of what they have got, and that is about them and their personal choices and how they spend their money. So it's on everyone's minds, but the way to get past that is to look at what other options and support is out there. I think just start the conversation. Budget isn't necessary at some point. There's lots of free resources out there, so start somewhere and engage with other like-minded wellbeing colleagues would be my other top tip. And pick the phone up and ask, and we'll help anyone that wants to talk to us.
Super. Kate, top 3 tips.
So I think the first one would be that try, and as we've kind of talked about today, like not one size is going to fit all. So if possible, offer a range of initiatives. And if you probably or might not be able to offer financial support as an organisation, but perhaps you can find a way of equipping colleagues with kind of the knowledge and skills to support their financial wellbeing, and then you can signpost them onto places where they might be able to access that financial support. The second one, I think, is in terms of comms. Sometimes I think there can be so many different signposting options, so to actually keep it quite simple and streamlined in terms of that initial comms that are going out about financial wellbeing. And then thirdly would be just to keep reviewing your initiatives to evaluate their effectiveness. So getting that feedback from colleagues and keep reviewing anything that is in place.
Okay, super. Nisha, top 3.
So I would say empower and engage leaders and managers, your staff networks and mental health champions, as they will be able to signpost colleagues as they come across them. I think there's educating and equipping people to know where they can find the resources. So it goes back to that point about finding their own pace and feeling as comfortable as possible in navigating the information that's around there. And then a really practical one is reviewing your reward and recognition schemes and repackaging them, because it might be that colleagues aren't aware of some of the benefits of working within your organisation. So repurposing them to make sure that they're accessible. Super.
Natasha, top 3 tips.
I would say talking about using anonymized case studies as examples of when people have struggled works really well, because it gives people it kind of reassures people that it's not just, it doesn't matter what rank you are within an organization or what level you are. It doesn't matter whether you've got a big house, small house, or what background you've got, that anybody can find themselves in financial difficulty. So I think that is really important. Giving people a safe space, so making sure that they know who to go to, and making sure that you're sensitive in terms of opening up that discussion, and giving people an opportunity to come to you and ask for support. Sometimes it can take a while. I've had people that have approached me after sort of 6 months of hearing me talk and say, I finally plucked up the courage to come and talk to you. And then the final one I would say is around, we are more and more, we're running in-person events, but streaming them on Teams. So I'm planning a conference in March, which is going to be an in-person one, but I'll be streaming it on Teams. So you've then got the perfect combination of people being able to come along, within a certain capacity, being able to hand out physical leaflets, but then also having that recording of it, so that, as I say, people working shift work, or if they couldn't make it on that day, they can still benefit from it.
Super. And Ryan, taking the last 3 tips.
All of what's been said, but I would, it's Talk Money Week, right? And we keep on about, let's get people talking and let's ask people to open up. Well, the first step is to ask them the questions. So I think getting feedback, making it data driven, asking your people what they want. If you've got a team of 10 or 10,000, there's certain things in place that you can use to do that anonymously as well. People don't have to put their name to it, just to get a feeling of what people want and what their challenges are, because no 2 companies are the same. Secondly, kind of start small. This could be quite overwhelming to think of all the different areas or elements of what a financial wellbeing strategy might look like. That's even quite scary saying that. So just starting small, doing something and building upon it. And then thirdly, I think what Nisha said there is really utilizing what you've already got, providers that you're already working with, EAPs, pension providers, whatever it might be, and your people. If you've got a network of managers, leaders, wellbeing champions, mental health first aiders, however many you have, even if you only have one, start with that, because that's going to then help comms as well. Everything could go through that network or that team and make it much easier. But it's not easy. It's not easy.
No, but thank you so much to everyone for your contribution. And I mean, I know I've been making notes as well, even though I'm on here and facilitating, moderating. I think there's some invaluable expertise and examples that we can all take away and really support our people. So I'm going to end off, of course, just with some of the follow-up resources that we'll be able to share. And also, please do reach out. I mean, of course, you will be getting some information after this, so we'll be able to share some of this. I'll put it in the chat as well. But there is some free research and resources for employers, free financial wellbeing strategy guides, and etc. And also some of these key takeouts that we've just been talking about in terms of the tips. On that note, we thank you so much for joining us. As I said, please do reach out to any one of us. Justine and Ryan are also available if you want to learn more around some of the work that they do in terms of Finwell and some of the workshops that they run. And if there is anything, I think please do reach out, because many of us here have the common goal, and the common goal is that we want to support the wider agenda on mental health and financial well-being, and any good that we can do in this area is something that we know can change lives, and anything we can do always goes towards that. On that note, again, thank you so much for your time, Kate, Natasha, Nisha, Ryan, Justine, for giving up your time to be able to share the great practice. And I hope that that you are appreciated for all the work that you are doing. I think often we do so much for others, we don't ever take a moment and pat ourselves on the back for the work we are doing. But I definitely see some amazing work being done here. So really well done. And thank you so much for giving up of your time. As I said, please do keep in touch. And again, comments. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. If anyone would last 1 minute, 2 minutes to say anything, please jump in now.
Just thanks to you as well, Nuz, obviously. Thanks for hosting and helping as always. So yeah, great panel. And my kind of thing is just let's keep the conversation going. We're working with lots of different sectors now, and it's just about best practice. There's lots of things hopefully we can help with, but there's loads of stuff you can do for free. And specifically public sector, councils, NHS trusts, emergency services and others. We want to try and get people together to share best practice as well. So feel free to get in touch and we'll let you know how you can do that.
Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good rest of the day. And hopefully we'll see you again on another session.